Welcome to Superhuman Selling. What if the only thing standing between you and your next level of success isn't strategy, effort, or even talent, but a belief that you didn't know that you were carrying? Today, we're going to be breaking down the science of unlocking your superhuman potential with someone who has lived it, studied it, and coached countless others through it. Welcome to the podcast. I am joined today by Erik Sorenson. And what I love about Erik, and I've had the pleasure of getting to know him over the past few months and connecting with him, speaking at his mastermind recently. This man is the real deal. So he doesn't just talk about potential, he shows us how to actually break through the beliefs that keep us playing small. And so I'm so excited to bring him to you on the show today. We just realized that you're in North Carolina. I'm from North Carolina. So probably know a lot more people than we even realize we know in common. Aside from that, he is an international speaker. He's the author of Commit First, as well as a new book coming out soon, which we're going to talk about today on the show. He's an entrepreneur, a coach, a marketer. He's an Inc. 5000 founder. He's a two-time TEDx speaker, a husband, father of 10 kids. I mean, if you want to, even just that, like, let's talk about some beliefs and how you got your mind on board with fathering and raising 10 kids well, because that is very impressive to me. So, Erik, welcome to the show. I am excited to dive in. I know we're going to have a really, really good conversation today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here as well.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, we were talking in the pre-chat, and as it often goes when you're talking to someone who really knows what they're talking about and you're excited about the topic, I was like, we got to hit record before we go too deep into this, because the content is going to be gold. So I would love to hear from you. You have built huge businesses, you've spoken all over the world, but you describe yourself as this 20-year overnight success. And so I would love to hear what that journey has taught you about the role of belief in our success.
You know, I really didn't know 20 years ago what life was truly about. It's one of those things where you're taught when you're young, you go to school and then you graduate and you go to college and hopefully you can find a good 9 to 5 job. And that's exactly what I did. I mean, I followed that exact script that most people I think follow. But I just felt that there was something out there more than a 9 to 5. And I don't know if you ever had a 9 to 5 job before you're doing what you're doing now. Have you?
Briefly, and then I realized that I was never made for it. But yes, I have.
I was from the same mold because I'm like, this is like, there's something more here. I just felt like I was
Mm.
sort of trapped, and it seemed like my aspirations for what I wanted in life seemed to be bigger beyond the box that I was put in. But I didn't know at the time what it would take to do that other than, I mean, I really had 2 skills. I was really hungry. I wanted to make some type of impact in the world. I had no idea what it was. And I was a hustler. I was had no problem taking action, going after something, finding what I wanted, and kinda like a dog with a bone, just going after the thing that I wanted, and those 2 things really helped me in the beginning of really trying to get going. So I walked out of the 9 to 5 job, and I started an ad agency, oddly enough, with no clients, no experience, but just hunger and hustle. And honestly, like, looking back, I have no idea how I even made it because, looking back at my experience then versus the experience that I have now, I don't know how the 25-year-old Erik even is here today because, like, it was definitely a lot of grace in there, definitely a lot of, some luck, I'm sure, but somehow, some way, we made it and kept building and growing, but it was essentially a journey that even I didn't even understand what truly life was about, what drove human behavior, what drove me to make the decisions that I was making, and what kept me from what I wanted until about 6 or 7 years ago. I mean, that's when everything literally changed, and oddly enough, it changed for one major reason: my entire life fell apart.
Mm.
Isn't that interesting? Like, you're going through these, having some successes in business, and you think you know what life's about, and all of a sudden, there's something thrown at you at 100 miles an hour, and you've got to adapt quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. So what happened?
Well, I business was going okay. It seemed I kept hitting these ceilings over and over, never really able to break past it. And, in my first marriage, things were not going well.
Mhm.
It was a challenge, went through 10 years of counseling. It was a very abusive relationship, and, um, I had part of the reason why I was, I think, very successful at business, at least trying to grow that, was because that's the one thing I could get wins in. I could get wins there quickly. I could feel good about myself. It was amazing, but it was overshadowed by the big challenge that every time I went home, things were really challenging. I had 4 kids at the time. And at the same time, I started going through a divorce and exiting out of that after a long period of time of trying to make it work. I just couldn't do it. And of course, that was affecting my business. And I had an opportunity to sell that business, and I shouldn't have, but I did.
Mm.
I sold it because I'm thinking, I'm gonna be a single dad. What am I gonna do here? And it just became by far the most difficult time of my life. I ended up selling for a lot less than I should have, exiting. It was okay, but here I am. My entire identity for 15 or so years was one thing, and then it completely changed to something else. I have a future ahead of me. I have no job, don't know what to do, single father, trying to figure out my life, and it was extremely difficult. Keep in mind, at this point in my life, I never really understood why people would go to a mastermind or to a conference. I hated those types of things. I hadn't read a book since college. And it wasn't that I didn't believe in learning. I just was, oh, you gotta just go. You just gotta keep moving. You just gotta keep rocking and rolling. Just run at the problem. And then I think it just caught up with me. And I remember it got so bad that there were times where I didn't want to live another day. I like literally it was that dark. And I can only talk about it now because I've told the story so many times. In the beginning was difficult, but I remember one difficult day. It was this pivotal moment that changed my entire life. It was a very dark day. I remember exactly where I was and what was happening, and I read a quote that changed my entire life. And the quote said that the scariest day of your life is the day you die, when the person you are meets the person you could have become.
Ooh.
And I'm sitting there thinking about, like, I know right now the thing that scares me the most is unrealized potential in my life.
Mm.
And that's the thing that freaks me out the most when I'm working with people is their unrealized potential. Graveyard is full of unrealized potential. People like you and me that had dreams that never, for whatever reason, maybe no fault of their own, didn't take action on those things. And I'm like, that's not gonna be me. I have to push forward so that the day I die, the person I am is the person I could have become.
Mm.
And for some reason, it lit a fire and got me out of, this depressed, difficult state, and everything changed for me. But the reason why that was so pivotal is because I started asking, like, well, what happened? I wanted to dissect the journey. And for some reason, I found neuroscience, psychology, the study of human behavior, like completely fascinating. And so I spent 3 or 4 years diving into that whole world. And, right after that experience, I did something I hadn't done in 15 years. I actually picked up a book,
Mm.
and then another and another. I started reading a book a week for like several years. And this may sound a little crazy to your audience, but I'm like, who's the guy that knows about the science of transformation? And I'm like, it's got to be Tony Robbins, right?
Yeah.
And I went to all of Tony Robbins' events in 1 year, every single one of them, and I just started diving, and I, hired coaches and
Mm.
started working with people, and I uncovered this entire world of not only just behavioral science, neuroscience, the science of change, and the intentional science of transformation, but I uncovered a way to actually be happy in life, to get out of challenges, to see things differently. That no matter what hits you, you're never stuck. There's always a way. There's someone that has figured it out. You're never like in a place where even if you hit a wall where you're completely done, unless if you give up. And and diving into that world just entirely changed my life. It changed my happiness. I mean, my life is so different now than it was even this was back in 2016, 2017.
Yeah.
Not very long ago.
Oh my gosh. Wow. I so appreciate that. I'm curious your take on this. So, one of the things that I believe in that we teach in our community is your results will never supersede your identity. And I think that when someone sets a next level goal, right? They say, I want to go from here to here. I want to expand my business. I want to maybe leave corporate and become an entrepreneur. They get to come face to face with all of those parts of themselves that are limiting, that aren't in alignment with where they're going. And I think Wayne Dyer talked about it this way. He said, the dark night of the soul is really a dark night of the ego. And so I hear that in what isn't that beautiful? Like this,
Oh, good.
it's so, it's so true, right? I hear that in some of what you're sharing. So to me, I always look at those moments, and I've certainly had plenty in my life, and I appreciate you sharing your experience because everyone can relate in some way, shape, or form to having that moment where you're like, I feel like my life is falling apart, where it's really there's something new that's being asked to come out of us. There's a new spark. There's an evolution, a transformation that we're being invited to go on. Now, whether we choose to say yes or not is our choice, I believe. But I'm curious about your take on that. And I think you talked about like intentional transformation as well. Do you see it the same way if someone is listening and they're like, man, I'm in that dark night of the soul. I feel stuck. I feel like I don't know where I'm going right now. And maybe this is the most challenging time of my life. How do are they being asked to activate their potential? And if so, how do we start to do that?
100%.
Mm.
I truly believe, like you are an iron in business, I believe that business is a calling. It is one of the greatest personal development programs ever established because it requires you to step up even when you don't feel like it. Like you can't let your team down, right? You've got a lot there. So yes, I truly believe it is really, it's kind of like that calling, that inspiration. And I don't believe you would have that inspiration if you if you weren't completely capable of fulfilling the thing that you're feeling to do. Like you mentioned, desire, a desire that you feel in your heart to do something is there for a reason. As you mentioned, it's a green light, which I love when you said that. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so true. It's absolutely a green light to step forward. And it doesn't mean that it's going to be an easy path. It just simply means it is another step to reach your potential.
Yeah.
And you mentioned like your identity, yeah, it kind of becomes a ceiling. And if you think about what your identity is, it's really a couple things. It's the stories that you tell yourself, and it's the standards that you have for yourself. Like
Mm.
you create your identity, you have created, and that is all has a foundation of who you believe you are. So, for example, when I shifted my identity, part of the reason why when I look back, and I know this now from neuroscience, I didn't know it at the time. I'm like, I get it. Like divorce was challenging and moving away from the business, but both were almost equally as difficult for me in terms of my identity because I was so ingrained in the hustle and the hunger of what I was trying to accomplish in my business that I put all the value I was having because I wasn't really getting it at home. I was getting the value at work and in the community because people were seeing us building this something incredible on what I did.
Mm.
And when you put your value on what you do, when you stop doing that thing, you lose your identity. You lose yourself because my business was me. I was my business. It was my identity. When I shifted and when I learned how to think about things the right way and install beliefs that create success, I realized that when I put my value on who I am versus what I do, it doesn't matter where I go. I take me with me. So if I'm doing an agency, great. If I'm speaking if I'm creating a speaking company, if I'm doing masterminds, it doesn't really matter. I take me with me and I can jump from wherever I want to go and nothing's going to change. I'm not going to lose myself because I know who I am. I know what my purpose is. I know what my mission in life is and I'm focused on it. So when you have that feeling, that calling coming to you and it's calling you to level up, follow it. Follow it with everything that you are. Take a few steps into that darkness because darkness, I truly believe, is divine. And the
Mm.
reason why is I think you can actually receive inspiration for your life during those dark times that you wouldn't be open to at any other time. I was too busy to listen for 15 years. And then finally, I was forced to step back and reevaluate my life. It was the worst thing that I ever went through, the greatest thing that ever happened to me.
Yes.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah. It always is though when I think I love that you shared that, and my experience has been and this may not resonate with someone who's in something right now where they feel like this is the worst thing of my life, but with perspective, it always is. When I look back at a time in my life, this is just a few years ago where it was like one of my most challenging years, both personally and professionally. And I can look at it now and say, I was being made during that time. Like the woman who needed to come out, the version of me who needed to come out in order to be able to lead our company and lead our family while my husband is med school. And like she was made during that time. And it does feel hard, right? It does feel hard, but I think it's part of the process. Um, you shared something when we were talking in the pre-chat that I'd love to go into with you, where you shared that, you run, I understand multiple like growing, thriving masterminds, and you're a phenomenal coach and trainer. And you talked about in the early days of leading these masterminds, you would be helping people create empowering beliefs, but they'd be layered on top of broken beliefs. And I know you've got your new book coming out, Belief Breaking, right, which is coming out in the next few months. And so I know people are going to want to get the book, and we'll talk about that too at the end here. But I would love to hear your approach to belief rewiring. And for someone who's maybe listening to this, they're like, okay, I know I'm being asked to evolve. I know I'm being asked to change. Maybe I'm in a dark night of the ego or not, but I want to grow. I want to break and rewire these beliefs. What is your approach? I'm really curious to hear.
I appreciate you asking that because the answer that I will give you is from learning from some of the greatest people in neuroscience, from neuropsychologists and neuroscientists. I met a neuroscientist in Texas, and I literally hired her for a full day,
Oh.
just going in and going through like the brain and how it works and what drives decisions and what doesn't, it was things like that that I was able to piece together, how this essentially works. If you think about it, your brain is really good at three things: distorting, deleting, and generalizing.
Mm.
And some of that's an important function, because if we were aware of everything out there, we would go crazy because we're getting millions of pieces of input every second. I mean, think about it. Like if your brain had to process everything at the same time, we would be a mess.
Yeah.
I mean, think about like your pinky right now. You didn't realize your pinky was there, right? And you don't and when you start
Yeah.
focusing on it, you realize, "Oh my gosh, I have a pinky, I have hands, and I'm not thinking about those things." But also our brain tends to prioritize threats over rewards. And so
Mm.
one of the challenges we have in life is that our brain is not really there to have us thrive. It's there to keep us to survive. So if all you want to do is survive, then your brain is going to serve you very well. It's going to keep you safe. It's going to keep you in places where you're not uncomfortable. The problem is, as you know, Elise, is that nothing good in life happens from comfort. Comfort really is poison. Everything good in your life and in my life, if you think about it, came from some sort of decision to stretch ourselves, decision to step a little bit into the uncomfortable, into the darkness, to the dark path, to do something that's kind of a little bit scary.
Mm.
That her brain said no, but you said go instead. That's one of the reasons why I think we don't achieve goals. If you think about it, like goals, I'm going to say something that may kind of surprise you or maybe confuse you, but goals are a terrible way. Traditionally, the way we do is a terrible way to achieve something.
Mm.
I've seen studies that say that 8% of people achieve their goals that set them. Well, I mean, imagine if I said, "Hey, I've got an investment opportunity, Elise, and I can promise you that 8%, there's an 8% chance you're going to get your money back."
Yeah.
No way you're going to say yes. And here's the problem: like New Year's resolutions come around, for example, and we set a goal to lose weight, like most Americans do, and all of a sudden, like your conscious mind is the goal setter. Like logically, you're setting a goal. The subconscious mind, if you think about it, is the goal getter. It's the thing that actually drives you to accomplish the thing.
Mm.
And so it's kind of like, as my friend Dr. Shannon Irvine, who I studied with, mentioned to me, that she talks about it like this. She says that it's like putting on the gas and the brakes at the exact same time.
Yeah.
You're saying, "I'm going to get this goal. This is amazing. I'm going to lose this weight. Fine. I'm going to look amazing in a year from now." And your conscious mind says, "No, you're not. You've never done this before. You've never been able to accomplish this before. You've never been able to achieve this thing. And so you're done." And the challenge is this: like when we're born, we have about 25 billion neurons in our brains, right? And about 100 billion neural connections. And what that means is, like, think about it. It's only like when you're a baby, your brain's function is to your breathing, your heartbeat, your blinking, your movements. Like those are the neural connections that are there. But it's like this fertile garden waiting for beliefs to be planted inside of it. Now, we only have two fears: fear of falling and fear of loud noises when we're born, which, if you think about it, then every other fear that you and I have was actually learned.
Mm.
You know, one of the scariest things is, think about it. All of your beliefs came from somebody else. Think
Mm.
about it. There are
Yeah.
a lot of the beliefs that you disempower you and disempower me, came from somebody else. Because here's what happens: by the time we're 7, and you've heard this, like, hey, by the time you're 7, most of your beliefs are foreign. Well, that's actually neuroscience, and here's why: you have 100 billion neural connections, like your beliefs and your functions of your brain and your body when you're born, and you have a quadrillion by the time you're age 7, which is, I believe it's 100 trillion, if I'm not mistaken. So in other words, you have the same amount of neurons, but all of a sudden you have all these beliefs forming. And here's the challenge: like something happens, you're 7 years old, and you see your father and mother fighting. Your father leaves, and all of a sudden you form a meaning from that when you're 7 years old, that, oh, if I get close to a man, he's going to leave me, or I can't trust men, Again, this is just completely just a random example,
A comment, yeah.
but it's not. The problem is when we're young, all of a sudden we form all these beliefs, but we have no context behind the belief. So we see something happen when we're young, and we form a meaning about it. And then that meaning, for most people, they carry it their entire lives. And ultimately, it destroys them because they form this meaning. In this example, for example, if you never can trust men, well, you're never going to get married and have children, or you're going to sabotage your own relationships when you get close enough to have it. And all of a sudden, it's you dive into it and you realize it was a belief because when your father left you, you formed that meaning back in the day. And nothing actually in life has meaning except for the meaning that we assign to it.
Yeah.
So life is truly not about what actually happens. It's the meaning that you form by it. And so that's why when we form all of these beliefs, we end up are living our life based on those beliefs. Because if you think about it, everything you will always act in accordance with your beliefs, with who you believe you are. Your identity is based on your stories and your standards. Your stories really are your beliefs and the stories about them. So you form a meaning, you tell yourself a story about it, you tell yourself enough that story, and all of a sudden you're 40 years old and you can't figure out why your life is falling apart because you've been carrying that belief and you've told yourself that story 40,000 times. And it's ingrained and deep in you. And so there actually is a path that we take people through to break those beliefs and rewire them. And we can talk about that in a minute. But that's really the foundation for all of this is the fact that we just have all these beliefs from the time we are very young, and we keep learning these things. And it's usually someone else's belief
Yeah.
that we created some meaning for that now is driving and controlling our entire life.
Mm. I think that's incredibly helpful, and I appreciate the scientific angle on that too, because I think a lot of times, I know at least for myself, when I first came into this material, I was kind of like you, where I thought it was all about success was all about just doing the thing, taking the actions, and there's you've probably seen this with the research that you've done, but my understanding is that it's our actions are responsible for like 3 to 5% of our results versus our beliefs, our identity, our embodiment, and that's really what drives the actions as well. I'm curious your take on this, and this may tie in with some of your process, which again, I know you go way deeper into in your book, so people are gonna wanna read that to be able to get the full process, but maybe we can speak to it at a high level. Let's say there's an area of someone's life where they have maybe felt stuck for a long time. Maybe it's, a lot of our listeners are entrepreneurs, sales professionals. So maybe it's money, maybe it's career. And they're like, I know there's something greater for me, or I know I have greater earnings potential. I know that other people have amazing relationships with money. I want to have that. But for some reason, I feel like I'm always stuck here. What if they can't even see what the belief is? Maybe they're conscious enough to know that there's some sort of belief there that's not helping them, but they can't figure out what it is. How do we figure out what the limiting belief is to be able to even break it and start to rewire it?
Most people can't see it.
Yeah.
Most people, think about it, like the things you told the story in our mastermind about when you were stuck
Yeah.
on the money side of things, and all of a sudden you essentially had to break through that a little bit. That's very common. Um, and because that's our belief lid, and it's kind of like setting a temperature. We all have a temperature when it comes to certain things. Like money is an easy one to talk about because, for example, money doesn't grow on trees. Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Just ask a farmer, right? It absolutely grows on trees. Like we have these temperatures, and if your temperature is set at 70 degrees, you might hit 72 or 74, but you'll always go back to 70 degrees. And so that's what happens when we're stuck, when we have this belief about something. And I'll give you an example. I was born in a very religious family, and there was a common thing that rich people are evil. By the way, if rich people are evil, are you ever going to become rich if you truly believe that? No.
Definitely
Oh,
not.
you're gonna sabotage yourself before you actually get there subconsciously. And like you said, most of the studies show about 93% of your decisions are subconscious and your actions are subconscious. Only 7% you're truly in charge of only 7% of your life. So and when I was growing up, the thought is that it's not necessarily bad to have money, but you really should have sufficient or enough for your needs.
Mm. Mm.
And had completely forgotten about this, and I was in business growing that first business, and we got to $10 million a year in revenue, which was awesome, but then I kept hitting it, never got past it. Years, hitting it, never got past it. But here's the other interesting that kept happening. It didn't matter how much money I made in terms of revenue. Guess what happened with what I was taking home? Every month, I had exactly enough to cover my needs, and maybe a few dollars more, sometimes a few dollars less. And I'm like, why in the world do I have this big business that's making all this money, but I'm actually not even a dollar more profitable than I was doing $1 million a year? And I realized something. I have enough to cover my needs. This was a belief that was ingrained in me when I was super young, and it's something that's spoken about a lot, in my home when we talked about it, to have sufficient or enough for your needs. And I realized that I was living exactly the belief that I had. So I had to do 3 things. Number 1, I had to recognize that this was actually happening, that this was a belief in me that
Mm.
I'm never gonna, profit-wise or take-home pay-wise, I'm never going to make more than, a dollar. If I have a dollar at the end of the day and I have all my bills covered, then guess what? I'm doing great because I'm acting in accordance with my belief. So that's the first thing, is I had to recognize it. Now, the second thing I had to do was question it or refute it.
Mm.
Like, is this true that my obligation is to have sufficient for my needs? I remember a coach told me one time, and he said, "Eric," this was back then, and he said, "Eric, there are things that God cannot call you to because of the beliefs that you have about money, because you don't have the income to change the world. Can you make less impact or more impact with more money?"
Mm.
And I'm like, "Wow." And that statement broke my belief, and I realized that the story was BS. Because it was just a belief that wasn't even my belief, that I had learned and I was living, and I realized that I can change the world at such a greater level if I have tens, if not hundreds of $1 million to make. Imagine the impact, and your microphone can get super big at that point. How much more can I change the world? And so the third thing I had to do, well, I had to like challenge the story and ask myself, is this story true? No, it's not true. Like, if I really want to make a change in the world, having sufficient for my needs is not evil, or is not the right way to do it. And having more than my needs is not evil, I guess is how I should put it. And so then I had to change the story, and I had to sort of rewire that by asking if the story was true, and then changing the story from, okay, well, if I'm extremely wealthy, can I help more people? Is it my responsibility, honestly, to make more money so I can provide more jobs? If I can impact the world and I'm an impact-driven person, is wealth going to make me evil? Well, no, it's not. So all of a sudden, I had to sort of rewire that belief. And there's a program that we take people through. It takes about 2 or 3 months where there's some psychology that we put on this, and you can literally rewire your entire life in about 2 or 3 months. It's crazy.
That's incredible. That's incredible. You spoke to we're so in sync because I was literally gonna ask you about a financial thermostat and how someone starts to raise it. So you started talking about the thermostat in there, which I love. I resonate deeply with everything that you shared, and I'm curious to hear your take on this. So a lot of our listeners, obviously, they're here to grow and expand their whole life, and they probably wanna learn how to grow their business. They wanna grow their money. They wanna grow their sales, and when it's so funny, like, and I'll even just share in my personal, life and perspective, and I was working with a member of my team on this last week, like, we reached that threshold, we keep that cap, what Gay Hendricks called the upper limit, right? And then, to me, if you wanna grow your sales, let's say someone wants to go from 1,000,000 to 10,000,000 or wherever they wanna go, it's about first bumping up your financial set point and your financial thermostat. Maybe not first, but I think that should be pretty early on because you're always gonna earn whatever your set point is.
Yes.
So I'd love to hear your take on this because I think you spoke to some of it already, and I can even tell in my own life, I'm like, I get to raise my set point to go to the next level, which I'm excited about, and I think you shared some things there that are really important about looking at, I love what your coach shared about you can't like, God can't call you to certain places if you don't have overflow. But let's say that someone is listening to this and maybe they are in a place of, man, all my needs are always met. Like, I know I'm good, but I want to step into overflow. I want to step into having more than I know what to do with. I want to raise that threshold. Anything else that you would share or say to someone who wants to consciously bump up their financial thermostat?
Yes. So I was coaching one of my clients a little while ago, and she had this lofty goal to do $100 million in business.
Yeah.
And I don't probably she's probably around $6,000, $6 million in business right
Mm.
now. I mean, that's a big leap. That's more than 10 times where she was. And so we were going through this, and I was questioning her, and I was trying to break her beliefs, and I was asking her about this, and I said to her, like, What's the thing you believe is, like, holding you back? Like, when you think about $10 million, and, like, let's just say you had or $100 million, let's say you had $100 million sitting in the bank right now, how would you feel?" And at first she was like, "Oh, that'd be amazing. It'd be great." And then then she kind of changed her tone, and it kind of scared her. And she was feeling something but couldn't put words to it. So I kept asking her questions. And she's like, "Well, I've had people in my family and that did have money, and the more money they got, the worse of the person they became, and I don't want to be like them. If I have more money, like, I don't want to become an evil person." Now, I know this person well enough to know she's amazing. Like, she's an incredible individual that would never be evil in my entire life. So there were 2 things going on. Number 1, I knew that wasn't the real story. But number 2, that was probably part of her belief. And if you believe that the more money you make, the more evil you'll become, and you don't want to be an evil person, well, then why would you ever do it? Your brain, here's the problem, is your brain will always find evidence to support that your story is true.
Mm.
Whether or not it is, it actually doesn't matter, which is wild. And so that's why we believe the lies we tell ourselves. Most disempowering beliefs, by the way, are not true. There's a study on this. If we had time, we'd talk about it, but they're mostly lies to ourselves. And so I went to her and I said, "Thank you. That might be part of it, but that's not the truth." I said it in a little more vulgar language, and I told her it was BS. And then she started crying.
Mm.
She realized that the more money she would make, people that were close to her and her family who didn't have a lot of money started distancing themselves from her. Now, whether or not that's perceived or actually true, it doesn't really matter. Um, but that was the real story. That the story was, the more money I make, the more I'm going to lose relationships with the people that I care about. And that's why every time we hit that ceiling, 3 things happen. Dan Martell talks about this. I think I'm not sure if he talks about it in Buy Back Your Time. He's
Mm.
talked to me about it. And that is you do one of 3 things. You sedate. Sedation could be drugs, alcohol, it could be Netflix. It could be just not
Mhm.
waking up and just chilling. You sabotage, which is the biggest thing, which is usually what mostly happens, or you stall. And when you
Mm.
hesitate, you lose momentum. So when we hit that ceiling, inevitably, have you noticed when you like in that point where you're hitting that belief lid and that belief ceiling, something comes into your life that knocks you down. Something happens, something comes off your rocker.
Yeah.
Is it like magical? Is it trying to keep you from there? No. It actually comes from your micro decisions that sort of create that scenario because your conscious mind is running the show. And so you literally are sabotaging yourself without even having any idea you're doing it. Because why would you try to make more than you're making now if you believe you're going to lose the closest relationships you've ever had at the core? And then we talk through how to rewire that because you can actually enrich your relationships with the more money that you have. And so we had to rewire that into the true meaning instead of the lie that she was telling herself. And this just happened a few months ago. So I'm super stoked to see what she does. And I know she's just going to go like this. But that's why you keep hitting that ceiling. It's not because there's some weird magical ceiling. It's because you're at the upper limit of your comfort zone and your brain is going to knock you down and feel safe. And that's when you put on the gas. That's when you're right there to
Mhm.
breaking through. And to me, a breakthrough means when your impossible becomes possible.
Mm. I love that. I love that so much. You spoke to this. I actually shared a reel that you did on Instagram not too long ago with one of my clients this morning, and it was about how when seeds are planted, they're in the dirt. And so I think that it's a little full circle from what we were talking about earlier, but a powerful way to kind of wrap this, and then we'll do a few rapid fire questions and talk about how people can connect with you. But um, you mentioned when it's like this is when people want to stop. This is when they want to quit. Is when they're in it. And they're like, man, I know I'm pushing on, maybe pushing on the belief more than anything else. If they're in this work, they're like, I know that it's not so much about the action, as about the belief. But can you speak to, I don't know if you remember the reel, if it was a newer one you recorded or not, but essentially just talking about, like, when we've set that new goal, it's like that seed being planted in the dirt and how it can feel like life is falling apart, or it can feel like, nothing is working, and just how you get your mind to work for you during those times to push through that upper limit to get what we want.
Well, first off, there's a brain hack that you can use that because when you set your goals, we typically ask the word how, which is the wrong question to ask. I mean, If you're setting a goal of something you've never accomplished before, that's like me asking you how to climb Mount Everest and to give me advice on that if you've never climbed Mount Everest. Like, why are you asking yourself how to accomplish a goal you've never done before? You're the wrong person.
I
The
will.
right person would be that to the person that has actually climbed
Yeah.
the version of your Mount Everest. That would be the right way to do it. But generally, like, it's the why that sort of drives us to do that,
Mm.
to accomplish that goal and to really just have those doors of opportunity and really just having the target. All of a sudden your brain is going to start to find evidence of that. Now, there's a hack that you can use. Instead of asking how or saying, okay, I'm going to make $1 million by December 31st, saying to your mind, it's December 31st and I have $1 million, or to say, I have $1 million. Like, you've probably heard a lot of people say, um, you know, speak to your goals as if they have already happened. I think Tony Robbins does that a lot too. But the reason why is that's actually based in neuroscience. It's actually a hack that most people know about your brain that gets rid of the brake that it's putting on by saying you can't do this because you've never done it before and you've committed to this 15 times and you've never been able to lose the weight or never been able to hit $1 million. It gets around that by you start to believe that it's actually happening. In fact, I had a massive goal and I photoshopped my bank account to the number I wanted to hit, and I looked at it every day, and I'm like, "It's right there.
Yeah.
Look at all the zeros." It was amazing, and guess what happened? Took about a year and a half later, and I was there, which is crazy. Like, a year and a half before, I would have never thought that would have been my bank balance, and sure enough, and I'll never forget, I actually pulled up the actual bank balance, and I showed it to my wife, and she looked at me, like, with big eyes, and I'm like, "The wire hit." It's just crazy. So act as if your goals have already happened.
Mm.
And you have to vividly imagine them. Not to bring up Dan Martell, but he mentioned that you should be able to vision your ideal perfect day, the revenue you're making, the money in your bank, the car you're driving, what you're waking up, say 5 years from now, or whatever your target is, 3 years from now, and describe it as well as you can describe today. When you have that level of clarity, your brain's going to find evidence to support that that story is true. And it's sort of the opposite of what happens from sabotage. It almost opens up the door of opportunity and things start coming your way. And all you need to do at that point is just simply keep putting on the gas. And when you feel like you're getting knocked down, when you're at that upper limit, make sure you're not like sabotaging yourself. Watch your beliefs, recognize them, make sure you're not stalling and sedating, and keep going. And it's really hitting those goals is much more about removing things from you versus adding things. It's
Mm.
more about removing the things in your way to create a clear path to your goal versus adding a bunch of stuff to get there, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Removing the resistance is really what it's about.
I absolutely love that. I think you use the, Michelangelo and David analogy sometimes, and
Yes.
alright, you wanna speak to that really quick, and then we'll go into the rapid fire?
Yeah. In fact, I got that from Benjamin Hardy's book. Probably around here somewhere. Dr. Benjamin Hardy, he's a neuropsychologist. 10x is easier than 2x. And he tells a story in the beginning of that book about Michelangelo and creating the statue to David, which is widely known in the 1500s as one of the greatest statues. It's in Florence, Italy. It's the most perfect statue. The Pope actually came to Michelangelo and asked him, like, how did you create such a perfect statue? And he said, it was easy. All I had to do was remove everything that wasn't the David.
Mm.
I mean, imagine if, like, you removed in your life everything that truly isn't you.
Yeah.
Like, remove the limiting beliefs and rewire them. Remove the resistance that you feel all the time. Remove not feeling like it, and so you don't do it. Imagine what you can accomplish if you just simply focused on removing
So good.
everything that isn't you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so good 'cause I think so often people think, "Oh, I have to become someone I'm not to have my goals accomplished," and I think you are saying this too, this is how I've learned to think about it. No, it's about taking off the masks, the layers, the limiting beliefs you took on that were other people's to become that fullest expression of you. Like your Florence Scotian talked about, we all have a divine design, something we came here to do that no one else can do. Uh,
Have
I
you seen the Spain study?
No.
Real quick, look it up. SP Annie study for your audience, look it up. It's one of the most powerful studies. They were studying frequencies of emotions. They put people in a Faraday cage, which basically blocks out other human emotions, or excuse me, all energies. And, all energies have frequency, like cell phone towers and radios and whatever. And we emit frequencies. Like, you walk past somebody, have you ever walked past somebody and you feel something about him? You're like, dude, something's going on in that guy's life. I don't know what it is, but you feel it even though he didn't say anything. Um, we can feel and sense other people's emotions. And so they were able to actually get the frequencies of joy and hope and love and fear and hate And they were able to tell the person what they were feeling just by measuring the frequency, which is wild. But there was an emotion that kept coming up and they couldn't figure out what it was. So they kept studying it, trying to figure it out. And it was actually 10 times greater than any other human emotion. It was the most powerful human emotion that we emit in terms of energy. You know what it is? I asked this question. Most people say love, joy, fear.
Mm.
And those were high, but this was 10 times higher. And it's shocking. Authenticity.
Oh,
Authenticity is the most, in other words, when you are who you are truly and acting who you are, guess what's going to happen? Your life and your business is going to explode because all of a sudden you're authentically being you and people will feel it
mm.
and they will want to be more a part of it.
That just gave me chills. That's so beautiful. Ah, this is so good. Okay, let's do rapid fire, and then I want you to share about your book and how people can connect with you further. So, short, sweet answers, like couple words, a sentence max. So first question for you is marathon runner, Ironman, or pilot. Which one pushes you the hardest mentally?
Iron Man for sure.
Love it. Why? In short.
Because Ironman is not a physical as a race as much as you think it is. It is a 100% mental race because your body gives out long before your mind ever does.
Ooh, okay, amazing. What is a superpower that one of your kids has that inspires you? I know this may be a hard.
I would say my 7-year-old Hutch because he believes in everything. Nothing is impossible for him, and I love the fact that he lives by the power of imagination, and he truly believes he can do the thing he wants to do, even if I'm thinking in my mind, "Oh, that's impossible."
Yeah.
So his wonder, his imagination is the thing that impresses me the most, that I definitely need more of.
Oh, I love that. Um, what is one piece of advice you'd give your 20-year-old self?
Dream bigger than you dream bigger. Like, not 10 times bigger, 1,000 times bigger than you think.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you're 20, you're kind of limited on what you think you can actually accomplish, and you can accomplish so much more and become so much more than you ever thought possible at
Oh,
20 years old.
so good. And then final question for you. So, if you could have one billboard that's seen by the entire world, what would it say?
It would say, "Rise to your potential."
Mm, amazing. Amazing. This is so inspiring. I wanna ask you so many more questions, so I wanna have you back on the show at some point, and I really, really appreciate this. Tell everyone, Eric, where can they connect with you? I know you're active on Instagram, and I'd love if you could share about your book coming out as
Yes.
well and just how people can get more involved in your work.
Yep, because, follow me on Instagram at Erik Sorenson, Eric with a K, Sorenson's with an O-N, or you can go to ericsorenson.com. The pre-sale for the book is gonna be released here within the next 30 days or so. It's called Belief Breaking, and we're gonna launch it at the beginning of the year next year. So, my TED Talk in November here is gonna be about my next TED Talk is going to be about belief breaking as well, because I truly believe it is the path to solving the core, not the symptom, but the cause of most of the problems and challenges that we have in our life is just by simply rewiring those beliefs and changing those stories.
Yeah, incredibly powerful. Well, thank you for everything you shared. Thank you for walking the talk and just also being so passionate about this. I can feel, and I know all our listeners can feel the power of this work through you as you're speaking and sharing. So thank you for, pushing through your own dark night of the soul, dark night of the ego to come to this and to bring this to the world because it really is. It's changing a lot of lives. And you've impacted me today, and I know you've impacted our listeners as well. So I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. To you, my listener, thank you so much for being here, for listening to this episode. Go connect with Eric, pre-order his book, order it depending on when you're listening to this. But you're going to want to go deeper in this material. I know that I'm really excited to as well. And so I just want to thank you, as always, for being a listener of the show and to remind you as we close out to trust yourself on your path to success. Remember that your desires are green lights leading you and everyone around you to a brighter future. I'll see you on the next episode.